So, hello everyone. Thank you for being here. Just a quick introduction of myself. I'm Giovanni, and I come from Italy. And I think I have been in the Web3 space for like 2 years. And I built several side projects. And one of the issues that I encountered was the storage. We can build a lot of type of applications, and what we are going to talk today is to build an application that is built on top of a decentralized database. So I started building applications, and I told myself, where I can store the data. So the first place where I went was to code a smart contract and store them on chain. But soon I hit with some issues. Storing on chain can cost a lot. And for example, another solution is to store on decentralized databases like a Filecoin or Arweave when we need to store images or files or anything that consume a lot of megabytes, and you cannot store them on chain. So by storing on file storage, you can get an URL and you store the URL on chain. But what about structured data? So that is what we are going to talk today. How we can tackle the storing structured data in a decentralized way. And what I write as criteria when I'm searching for a solution for this are the privacy, the speed, and the cost. So let's start with the first one. When we're storing data in a traditional database, so in the Web2 space, we can restrict the access. But on the blockchain, everything is public. So storing sensitive data, it can be hard. Then another problem that we want to solve is the user experience. I think most of you have tried the app that we have here, like a messaging app, an exchange, or a marketplace, where you can buy something and the experience is so smooth. To update the UI just within 1 second. And when you are making like a transaction in the Web3 space, it will pop up a MetaMask wallet, you have to approve, have to pay, and then you have to wait seconds. And the blockchain where you have also to wait minutes. That is a hard limit, and that is making it hard to create app that can get mass adoption. Who want to wait minutes for app to work? And the last one is the cost. On Ethereum, I think last year it hit $1,000 at the peak. And it's like normal people can't afford paying $1,000 just to make a transaction. And today it still costs, I think, today $5 maybe to make a transaction or make a swap. So that brought me to think about what I can use to build an application that can scale. And what I found is a new company that started recently, and its company name is Polybase. They stated themselves as the alternative, the decentralized alternative to Firebase and Superbase. I really like their tech, and the key feature are they are offering libraries, SDKs, to allow developers create easily data permission. So we can create a database with public access, private access, and optionally the developer can build encryption into the data. Then the learning curve is also really low. So if you already tried Firebase or Superbase, it's almost the same. And here, a key feature about Polybase is the size limitation. You don't have limits on the rows and the column that you can create on the database. And then it is fast. So with Polybase, it unlocks tons of opportunities for developers. Like we can create end-to-end encrypted messaging apps, exchanges, and social medias. To try Polybase out, I built an MVP. It's called Identify. It's a messaging app. It's not a messaging app, sorry. It's an event app where the organizer can create an event, and then the attendees can buy the ticket and do the check-in. It's built on the most common tech stack that we use today, like React, TypeScript, Tailwind. I have the repository open source, so I can share with you at the end of the workshop. It should work because it's a GIF, but anyways. So the application enables the organizer to create, then the attendees can explore the events on it, buy the ticket, and when the attendee goes to the event, shoot the QR code to do the check-in. This is a basic flow of the application, and because today we are focusing on the decentralized database, we are not going to take a look into TypeScript or the UI. We are going to focus on how to build with Polybase. So today's agenda, we're going to start with how to create the schema in the database, and then how to read, write, authenticate the user, and create access control to Polybase. So let's start with the setup. Polybase provides several libraries. The client enables you to build with any JavaScript framework or vanilla, but if you choose to use React, they also provide hooks to make it more handy to create on top of it. So the database uses a new language, Polylang. So should we need to learn a new language to use Polybase? Well, they call it Polylang, and it sounds like a new language. In reality, it's something that we already know. So if you can check this code, you can see it's basically TypeScript with some added directives. So if you know how to write TypeScript, you also know how to write Polylang. And to get started, you don't need to install anything or any extension on Visual Studio Code. They provide this studio that you can go to the Explorer and then on Create Collections, and it will open the web editor where you can start coding and defining the schema. So also in the studio, you can also take a look into the data that you have already stored. Now let's take a look into the collection. So the collection shows in the following way. We have the field, column, then the field type, pretty straightforward. And then we have the constructor. The constructor is used to create a new row in the database. So if in the schema we define in the following way, what we do to call this constructor in the front end is by calling the create method. Then we have the functions. We use the function to update a row that is created, so we can change the data. And to call it, we use the call method. Then we have the directive if we want to add a search or filtering feature to our application. And here what we're defining is we are enabling the sorting of by population and searching by name. And it works on the front-end side by calling the where method. Now let's take a look into how to read the data and what feature Polybase provides for reading. First, we need to create the Polybase instance. we need the default namespace. The default namespace work like the token ID or secret key that we can get from Supabase or Firebase, any traditional database. We can get this default namespace from the studio that we saw before. So by going to the setting section, here we can find our default namespace. Then, if we need to add a real-time feature, like we want to notify the user of a new event when it's added to the database, we can use the onSnapshot method to handle it. What about pagination? I think the default amount is 100 items. I'm not sure yet. But if we want to get more, we can use the next method. So as you can see, we can get everything with just a few lines of code. Then for filtering, we have the word keyword and also the one that we saw at the beginning, the sort method. And we also have the record method when we want to create the profile of the user, or when the user click on an event on a list, and we want to only fetch the data of one row. Now let's dive into how to write to the database. To create a new item in the database, we use the create. And what we're passing is an array of arguments. And the order matters here, which means that if in the constructor we have the ID in the first place, the first argument corresponds to the ID. To update the database, we use the call method, where the first argument is the name of the function that we define in the schema, and the second argument is the array of the arguments. So here is how we coded the schema and how we call it from the front-end side. Now, we also need to authenticate the user. And we don't need to create a model or write a ton of codes, because everything is already done by Bodybase. And what we need to do is just call sign-in, and it will show a pop-up to the users. If it's a Web3 user, they can use MetaMask, and if they don't have a wallet, they can just simply use their email. Now, we are going to take a look into the access control. We don't want anyone to write and access to any data as we defined before. In the previous example, we use the public. Okay, so there's 4 ways to create access control. And the first one that I was saying was the permission one, where in the previous example, we use public key, which means that anyone can read and write to the database. And that is not what we want. It is too general. We want to create more granular access to the database. And we can achieve it by using delegation. So in this schema, what we can see is we are delegating the read access to the creator and then to the public key. So whoever that is calling the database must match the address with the public key defined under user. If this sounds too hard, there's another way, which is using the context. Because we authenticated the user every time that the database is called, it contains the context with the called public key. So we can just create the rules inside the function to restrict the access. Now let's talk about encryption. So with the previous method, we can deny the access. With encryption, we are always showing the access, so anyone can read them on the database, but only who has the key can decrypt the content. And the way we do that is by using the utils library provided by Polybase. It contains two encryption methods. One is symmetric, and the other one is asymmetric. In this example, we are showing how we can do it with the symmetric encryption. What we need to do first is to create a secret key, and we have to store it somewhere, because then we have to use it to decrypt. So the way that we do is we use the key, and we encrypt the data, and we upload the data to the database. After that, with the key, we can decrypt the content. So, as I said before, if you're using React, you will have a better developer experience, as it provides hooks that enable you to read the data and write to it more easily. So what we have learned so far is there's tons of tools that enable us to create better application, more scalable. Right now, the best solution that I found is Polybase, so that's why I like it a lot. What we have seen so far can help you to start your journey to build anything that you want. There's some problem, I think, in this page. It should show you the link to the GitHub repository and to dive deeper into the documentation. So if you want to the link, you can hit me up later after the workshop. In any case, you can reach out to me on Twitter, and this is my name. Yeah, I think that's it. If you have any question, I'm here to answer. Yeah.
Thank you. Who are maintaining the servers, these databases? Who are maintaining the servers with databases, and does it have some incentivization to maintain it?
So the data are stored on centralized database or decentralized database. That depends on you. What Polybase provides is they have those nodes running, and they are pluggable. Those nodes right now are centralized, like all of them are run by the core team, and they want to decentralize the nodes. And then you, as a developer, you can plug the Polybase to any database that you want. So you can go the centralized way, so you use Amazon S3, or you can use Filecoin, for example.
When you're using Filecoin, how does you have to pay for storage? So do you pay ahead of time to Filecoin, or does Polybase provide like interface for you to pay Filecoin?
When I tried out, it was on testnet, and it was completely free. I don't know how they want to implement on mainnet. Like I read in the documentation that they want to introduce a token. So anytime that you use a Polybase, you are going to need to buy the token and use them. About Filecoin, if you need to pay also to them, I don't know if it is covered by the token or not. That we should like deeper, moving forward when the mainnet go public. Right now they are in private. The mainnet is launched, and they are testing out.
Thank you. Do you have any question, guys? Yeah.
Thank you for your presentation. How does it look from the user's perspective when they're fetching data? Is there like a signature every time? For example, you're fetching 5 tickets. Does the person have to like click 5 times to fetch all this encrypted data and show it? How does it work really from the end user perspective?
So your question is how the end user will interacts
with the app, with his wallet to to see his own data that's encrypted. So he has to sign every time he wants to read or write into the database.
So for reading, the user don't need to sign anything. So for reading, it will work like a Web2 application. The user wouldn't notice any Web3 stuff. What the user will experience differently is writing. When you have to write, you must sign a message. And the user don't need to pay anything. It's just signing. That will be the user experience.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. How fast does it operate comparing to Web2 databases?
How fast it compared to traditional databases? So for reading, I think it matched the traditional databases. It's 100 milliseconds, very fast. And for writing, it's a bit slower because it's, I think, around 1 second. And also the user need to sign the message.
How do you answer access control?
Access control?
Yeah.
So the access control is defined by the directive ampersand delegate, read, public, call on the schema. So if a field is defined with the directive call, for example, anyone can have access. But then if you add the delegate, only the public key that is defined in the row can access to it. So let's say that someone call it and the public key is already stored in that row, then he can read that row. A real example could be a blog where the owner has several writers, and the owner wants each author to edit their own post. So, and each author, it will be include the public key, and when they sign into the application, they can only through the dedicated directive edit their own post. Sorry? Can you explain better?
Your data where is stored, where you store your data on blockchain?
Where is the data stored?
Yeah.
The data is stored is up to you. Polybase run those nodes where they create the proof with TK-stalk, and then it is validated and stored whatever you define. So it could be the centralized solution like Filecoin, or it can be centralized solution like Amazon S3.
Any other question?
How does the user decrypt the data when he wants to access his data?
How the user decrypt the data? So with encryption, we use the UT library, which provides a way to create a secret key. This secret key, the user must store somewhere, like the private key from your wallet. The user, when they store something encrypted, the user should still have the key. So when the user fetches the data, the encrypted data from the database, the user uses the same key to decrypt it.
Other question, or it's okay? Apparently, yes. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.